Evening, everyone, and Happy New Year. Um, it's lovely to see so many of you this evening for our very first of the 2024 Wednesday webinar season. If you happen to glance on that opening PowerPoint, I've put three of our upcoming webinars on there, but there are many more on the upcoming webinars page on the FSA website. So please do go to there and have a look, because we've got a really good program this year. There's some more pedagogical and thinking based ones, and then we've got some practical ones. We've got some things on storytelling, we've got some things on knot work, and we've got some stuff on neurodiversity. So it's a really good program, and we'll be releasing more details of that as we come into probably February. But definitely do go and have a look at the upcoming webinars page on the FSA website. So I'm going to pass on to Susie, who is an amazing person that ran a workshop at the FSA conference, and we've nabbed her to do an extra bit for our Wednesday webinars. So thank you so much, Susie, for coming along to do this, because I know it's going to be so valuable to forest school leaders.
Hello. Good evening, everybody. And I want to say a big thank you as well to Matt and Mimi for opening the doors and welcoming me into the Forest School community. I just feel very lucky to have met Mimi one dark and winter's night in the woods far away. And I found out about all of these lovely people and this wonderful community of people who are all working in the forest or in their settings, getting children outside. And I thought, hang on a minute, I think this is wonderful. And I also have a very good friend of mine from university days who has been a forest schooler for some time, and she's joined this evening. So I'm delighted to be part of this community. I'm very happy. So I thought I'd start just by saying a little bit about myself. I'm Susie Cornish. I'm a teacher of the deaf. I've been teaching for 35 years and working with deaf children, mainly in Berkshire, but before that London, and before that Brighton, and before that a few other places. My last job was working as a peripatetic teacher, so traveling around different schools, visiting children in mainstream settings, and also visiting families with really young babies when they're very first diagnosed and they first get their hearing aids, and working with their families to understand really what deafness is and the implications of that for them as a family, and supporting them with the equipment and giving them lots of positive strategies for supporting their little ones in the very early stages of language development, and then carrying on supporting them in their local schools, training the teachers, helping them to use strategies in the classroom. Sometimes finding that the strategies the teachers use are fantastic and it's all working brilliantly, and those children are doing brilliantly and making wonderful progress. And sometimes saying, oh, we need to make some tweaks, either to the environment or to some other aspects of providing access for the children into education, but also carrying on supporting them at home. It has been an amazing job. I've been very lucky to find something that suited me. And I suppose my passions are sort of connection and connecting people, and finding a way of sort of welcoming people in who perhaps that connection might have been broken somehow, because I think people do need communities, although some people sometimes like to be on their own for a bit, even me. But we do need our communities, and I like this sign for communities. Communities, I think we get a lot from communities, and I think we realised that in COVID when we were all locked down and locked up, and for many people, possibly our more vulnerable people, they became very isolated. Another nice sign, I like isolated. So isolated. So this is lonely, isolated. And we saw lots of issues with that isolation with the very young children, didn't we, when they were trying to socialise, and the deaf children in particular, when it's all about accessing language and their specialist support, really did struggle. And it was a really big problem for them coming back to school and trying to support them again to get back into school and to somehow support them from where they were. I hate the word catching up because I didn't think that was a thing that we could possibly do, but supporting them, to just develop and make the next steps, and for it to be a positive journey for them. So I just talk a lot about everything, but I've got some things to show you. So, but before we go on to the presentation, I thought we could play a game. Would you like to play a game? It would be lovely if you could maybe share your video, but it's fine if you can't, it doesn't matter. So we're going to play a game just to warm us all up. Now we're going to learn some animal signs for our game. So if you can copy me with some animal signs, that would be great. And I'm going to go over here so that you can see me. Can you see me, by the way? Has anyone got me on a... I quite like to see myself a bit bigger. How do I do that? Can I pin myself or something? I'm so tiny.
Yes, you can.
Can you do it for me, Matt?
I will do that for you.
Because I'm like a millimetre big. I can't see what I'm doing. Oh, that's a bit better. Okay, hello. Can you see me at a reasonable size now, everyone?
Yeah.
Yeah, is that all right? Okay. So we're going to learn some animal signs. Now, if you're right-handed, this is going to be your main signing hand. And then if you're left-handed, that will be your main signing hand. So obviously, if you're right-handed, you're not going to be mirroring me exactly. So it will be the other way around. Does that make sense? So I'll start off with, so we're going to do some animals that live in the woods or on the land. So I'm going to call them trees. And the game is going to be called Trees and Seas. Okay, the first animal, blackbird. Blackbird. Okay, so if you're left-handed, it will be, sorry, blackbird. Blackbird. But right-handed, blackbird. Okay. Squirrel. Squirrel. Owl. Wolf. Spider. Spider. Ant. A bit like a spider, but a little one on your arm, but ant. I can see some people signing. Well done. Very good. Very good. Mushroom. That lives in the woods, doesn't it? Mushroom. These are all things that live on the land or in the woods. So they are trees, tree animals or tree creatures. Leaf. And I made up one. Unicorn. That's an imaginary one. But I don't think it lives on the sea, does it? It lives in the woods. And I know, you know, the children always bring up imaginary animals and when we're playing games. So anyway, so horse with a horn, unicorn. I made up that sign. I think that's okay. And now we've got some sea animals. So we've got fish. Fish. So I'm going from right to left. If you're left-handed, it will do it the other way around. Fish. Can you guess what that is? Jellyfish. Jellyfish. And this one? Shark. And then there's two signs for whale. So whale. Actually, I've done that wrong. I think I'm doing it wrong. It's the tail, isn't it? Going down, whale. But there's also whale, as in the water coming out of the back. But I like this one, whale. Whale. And it's not the same as this one, which is our imaginary animal or creature. Mermaid. Mermaid. Sorry, I'm having to stand on tippy toes. Mermaid. Mermaid. So the game is, well done, by the way, very good signing. The game is I'm going to turn my voice off. I'm going to do a sign, and I want you to sign whether you think it's a creature of the trees, the forest, or the seas. But you're gonna have to try and remember them. Okay? Are you ready? Yeah, well done. Owl, forest. Okay. Well done. Okay, good to see. Forest, mushroom, well done. Forest. Forest. Pretend. Forest. There might be some in the sea, maybe. um, um, done. Fantastic. Yeah, brilliant. Well done. That's great. It's just a little game to get you tuned in to some of the animal signs. And I don't know, maybe you can play it with the children as well at a circle time. Um, and yeah, it's a bit of fun. So I don't know whether anybody here has signing experience or have learnt their alphabet, but perhaps we should go over when we do use signs and the difference between the different types of signing that we do. So can I see some more people now instead of just is that all right? Doesn't matter. So when we're signing most things like animals or everyday objects or actions or verbs, we will be using those sorts of signs, sort of iconic symbol signs. But if we want to be signing about real names, like real nouns, proper nouns, names of people, that's what I'm trying to say, names of people, proper nouns they're called, aren't they? They're places and names of people. We need to finger spell. So again, if you're right-handed, this is going to be your pointy finger for doing the finger spelling, and your left-handed is your notepad for doing your ABC on. And if you're left-handed, it's the other way around. So I'm right-handed, so this is my right hand. So first of all, it's just A, E, I, O, U. Okay, if you're left-handed, it's the other way around. And shall we just go through the alphabet very quickly? But you can practice and you can watch on YouTube. So let's have a little go and go through. When in the summer, we played a game where people said their name. So what we'll do is we'll go all the way through, and then you can take it in turns to say your name. So my name, my name is Susie. So I would just do the first letter if I met somebody and they would say, oh, Susie what? And then I would probably finger spell S-U-S-I-E. Okay. And then I have a sign name as well, which is Susie because I've got curly hair. I have a friend whose sign name is Louise because she has lots of mascara. So, and you're given your sign name. So the children that I worked with gave me my sign name when I was a long time ago when I was working in London, in Ealing, so West London. Yeah, in London, West London, Ealing. So I would finger spell Ealing. Some towns have sign names too, and you can look them up. And the boys really like their football names. So if you look up Liverpool and Manchester, they have their own signs. So it's very cool. So what are we doing? Oh, alphabet. Right, let's do the alphabet. Should we go through? So A, B, C, D, E. That's your second finger, remember. E, F, G, H, I. I's a long I, isn't it? So it's your long finger. I, J, make a J shape. K, make a K shape. L, one finger. M, N, O, P. Have I missed out a letter? Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z. If you want to learn more, then you can look online and then you can practice. And I think when I send some bits out later on, I think we might put an alphabet sheet in. So that's names of towns and names of people. So, right, so we're going to go for a walk now into the woods, into the forest. I always do it with two hands, but it's not really two hands, but I get a bit over, right, to the forest. And let's go for a walk into the forest. And we're going to walk around. And we're going to find some wood on the ground. And then we're going to light the flames and make a fire. And watch the flames that are yellow and gold. And then we're going to gather round when we are cold. Should we go and have a look and see what we've made? See if we've made a fire. Should we have a look? Right. I need to do this. I need to do that. Oh, we played trees and trees. Okay. I haven't got control. I've lost control of my screen.
If you press the space bar, it sometimes moves along.
Sometimes just likes a little break, doesn't it? Wonder why it's taking. I'm clicking and it's sort of not moving on. So we're hoping to this evening to start to understand a little bit about hearing loss and its impact on our children. And we're wanting to break down barriers and overcome challenges. And we're going to be thinking about how deafness impacts early language development. And maybe talk a little bit about the equipment that the children need. Oh, we lit a fire. Look what we did, the wood. And we're coming to the fire now, gathering round, looking into the flames with our little forest school group or our family. And there's that lovely shared focus, isn't there, around the fire? And we've made a little community all of a sudden just because we've lit a fire and everybody's staring into the fire. And we might be talking about the fire circle and the warmth of the fire and the flames, and talking about how lovely it's been to be in nature, the red and the gold and the other colours that we see in the wood, and that we needed to find dry wood and not wet wood. And we've made a community and we feel like we all belong. And then we're talking about the safety aspects of the fire and that we need to be careful. These people are very near to their fire, aren't they? It's not forest school fire, I don't think. We've been talking maybe about walking slowly around the fire, talking about the woodland, maybe if we're in woodlands, and sharing. perhaps sharing with each other or learning to share the marshmallows and safety aspects, and where we've explored today. And we've created a common language, haven't we? Just by sitting there, we've created a common language around the fire. Maybe this evening, but imagine, sorry, it's a bit of abrupt change. Imagine what would happen if you couldn't access that language. And you didn't have access to all of that lovely vocabulary that we just looked at. The nature, the safe, the warmth, all of those lovely words, because you've got a hearing difficulty or maybe another difficulty. And one by one, those words start to disappear. And our community that we know is really helpful for us all, and we really want to belong to, would be fading away. And we would have not perhaps then some good feelings about what is happening, because remember how lovely we felt when we were sitting around the fire, all those lovely words that we were sharing. And this is what can happen if a child can't access that language. And for some children with deafness, if we don't make little adjustments, then that can lead to a feeling of isolation because of the lack of understanding, misunderstanding new concepts, which means then that is a barrier to learning. Barrier to learning means gaps in attainment. And really it's language deprivation and language delay and literacy delay. I'm talking about language broadly. I'm talking about language and not communication. Communication can be just showing somebody something. These words, we saw how beautiful those words were. These are words that build a connection between people. We can often show somebody what we mean by holding it up, but the words are really powerful, aren't they? And whether we're signing or whether we're talking, using verbal communication, it's so powerful to have that language, and it's so isolating not to have it. So let's imagine now let's meet one of our little children, maybe who's sitting around the fire. We'll call her Jade. Jade sits to my left around the fire with her better ear near to me. She has one good ear and one less good ear. She might hear okay. She might have a little bit of hearing in one ear. But one ear is a lot better than the other. So she's sitting with her better ear next to me. She hears well with this ear, and she likes to be here because she enjoys listening to the story. Today, the story is A Shark in the Park, one of our favourites. She hears it all and she thinks, and she hears it all, she thinks, and she knows the story. But then Freddie asks a question from the other side of the circle, and Jade turns to me with a little frown. Freddie is on the other side of the circle. What are Jade's listening challenges? So, would anyone like to say something? Or shall I just say what I think they are? What do you think Jade's listening challenges are?
She can't hear from across the other side of the circle.
Yeah. She's got good access to the story when the teacher's using a nice loud voice, but she cannot hear. So what does that mean? What will that mean? She's missing out on.
If you can't hear the question, you don't understand what's being, you can't get to grips with what the answer is because you didn't hear the question, so you don't know where it's going and why, perhaps.
Yes, Freddie might say, so instantly she's no longer in the community and she's having a panic. What's Freddie want to know? Or maybe I've asked everyone a question and Freddie's answered. Do you think it's going to be a shark this time when we turn the page over? And Freddie's gone, no, I think it's going to be a crow, and Jade's not answered. Then Jade feels left out. But we think, oh, Jade's all right, she can hear the story, it's fine. But those children with that moderate loss sometimes sort of fall under the radar a little bit. Mild or moderate loss, it has big implications, really. Yeah. So another little girl, Kira, sits opposite me, but she isn't ready yet. Kira communicates using British Sign Language and some speech. She has new cochlear implants, so I think Kira is about 5, maybe 4 or 5. She has new cochlear implants, but is only just getting used to sounds and spoken language. We wait while she finishes her hot chocolate because she's busy stirring it and exploring the melting marshmallows and not quite tuned into the story, not quite ready to switch her focus. So how do we break down challenges for Kira or children like Kira? What could we do? We are waiting, aren't we, for her? We're waiting until she's ready. I mean, how does she know that she's supposed to be looking? Because she can't really hear us. She's not really aware. She doesn't, does she? She doesn't know that we've started the story. She's really interested in her marshmallows. I mean, actually, this little girl, she used to spend a lot of time looking at her shoes, you know, other children's shoes. It's just so interesting. So we would have to do a lot of things to get her attention. The usual early years stuff, this sort of thing. Or we might sing a little "Ready, Are You Ready" song. And we wouldn't try to isolate her, because by saying, Kieran, you need to listen, we try to do something for the whole community. Remember, we're trying to create a community, so we're all using these strategies and not just for the deaf children, because there will be other children who will need them as well. So it is the usual things, but for a deaf child, they just don't know that you've started. And those transitions between one activity and another, you know, whenever an activity changes in school, we need to be making sure that everybody's with us and spending a little bit longer in those transitions with the deaf children. It just takes them a little bit of a while to tune in to listening, if they're listening, or the signs, if they're signing. So this is a lovely story that says it all. If I read it in this mode, can you still see the story, or shall I stop sharing, do you think? All right. Can Bears Ski by Raymond Antrobus and Polly Dunbar. This is a great story. Raymond Antrobus is a deaf writer and poet, young man. He's been, you can look him up. And Rose from Strictly also did a lovely a BSL version of this on iPlayer. But I'm just going to read it to you because it's a good deaf awareness story. Can Bears Ski. Dad Bear has a hard time waking me up in the morning. 1, the radiator shakes. 2, the bed rumbles like a large empty tummy. 3, the windows by the bed tremble. 4, Dad Bear takes 1 heavy step forward. The ceiling cracks. 5, my eyes snap awake. I explode out of bed. My feet hit the ground. I'm up, I'm up. I love the pictures. I put on sky blue socks and my orange trousers and my yellow jumper. I like my colours loud. Dad has had to try quite hard to wake this bear up. And I think it wasn't the sound that was waking him up. It was those vibrations, wasn't it, as Dad was coming up the stairs. And little bears started to learn what those vibrations mean as they get louder and nearer to his room. It's been snowing. Everything feels still. No rumbling, no trembling. It's like everything is breathing quietly. Then I feel Dad's voice. 1, the banisters shake. 2, pictures wobble. 3, stairs flinch. I'm coming, I say. So Dad is communicating with the bear, with little bear, isn't he? But little bear is not hearing those words, those verbal clues and cues to come downstairs, it's time for school. I gobble, gobble breakfast. Dad Bear has the TV on. I can see a man in a blue bodysuit skiing fast down a slope. Dad Bear is saying something to me. Daddy's looking at the telly, by the way, and he's not looking at the bear. I think he says, "Can bears ski? Can bears ski?" I shrunk. I'm not sure I heard him right. I eat the last of my porridge. Time for school. Dad Bear talks a lot on our way to school. I hear the crunch crunch of the snow. Dad Bear stops and looks directly at me. Your friend was saying hello. Why did you ignore him? I didn't. I didn't. The story goes on, and as you can see, little bear is not picking up on the listening clues and cues of his world, and it's having a big impact on him. I think it's quite a good story because the children really love it, but adults get a lot from it as well. So the story goes on, I'm not going to read it all, and he goes to the hospital and he gets hearing aids. So this is him in the hospital. Again, it's nice to have a book for the children who wear hearing aids with a little bit of a role model so that they can have a look and they can go, oh yeah, I've been there. I've been to the audiologist and had those funny things on my ears. So she puts headphones on my head and she wants me to put a block on the table every time I hear a sound. My children love this because they go, oh, that's me. And then she shows us something called an audiogram. Says little bear, audiogram. It's also a hard word to say. On the audiogram, my results are the shape of a ski slope. I imagine myself skiing down. The audiologist says, can bears ski? Birds. I think he's saying that actually, and she may be saying something else. So little bear gets hearing aids. They're very uncomfortable at first. Everything sounds like robots. The audiologist puts them on, twiddles them around, and then she says extremely loudly, can you hear me? That's the end. It's not quite the end, but we're going to leave the story there. It's taking up lots of time, but you can see that in that story, Little Bears, people are communicating with him. He hasn't got the language to understand what's going on, and it's causing difficulties at school, connecting with people and understanding his world. He's just in his own little world, and now he's got his hearing aids. I wonder what will happen next. There's a lot of barriers for him, how he's had to tune into his world, and what will happen at the end of the story. It's not the end of the story. It's not all the next day he can hear everything. Things will get better, but it will take some time for him to learn and understand that language. So we're going to go a little bit deeper into that to understand what we mean about hearing loss and what happened maybe when Little Bear came out of audiology. There are lots of different levels of hearing loss, from mild up to profound. So a mild loss, I've got a mild to moderate hearing loss, which is just because of my age. I need to do something about it. Yes, we'll have a look in the next slide what the difference between that is. Some children with a mild loss don't wear hearing aids, and they can manage, but we still need to be aware of that and try to make little adjustments for them if we know about it. And I think it's important, if you've got children coming to your setting, that you know which type of hearing loss the child has and how that impacts their language. So it'd be useful to have that information. A profound loss means that very little sound, spoken language, is getting through to the brain, and it will be very difficult to interpret spoken language without some a very good hearing aid, and they would probably try hearing aids first and see if that would help. But quite often those children have cochlear implants now. And many of the children who have cochlear implants very early on do extremely well. Children in this country are tested at birth, so we do know most of the time if a child is born deaf or not from birth. And as I said, my job was going in from right at the beginning to try and make sure that we get the hearing aids on children that needed them straight away, because you've got that lovely period of neuroplasticity when the brain can make the most of sound if you get in early enough. So how we hear, remember, this is Susie Science, I'm going to whiz through it. So raw, you hear a raw, and the sound goes into this bit of your ear, into towards your eardrum, and your eardrum vibrates, and all those little bones, remember the malleus, the incus, and the stapes, remember that from biology? They all vibrate and knock on each other, and sort of knock on this little area which is called the oval window. The oval window is the window into the very precious, amazing middle ear. And the middle ear is where all the magic happens. So you've kind of got sound waves going in, and they are stimulating the cochlea. And the cochlea is like a shell. It's the same size as a little fingernail cochlea. And inside the cochlea are tiny hairs, and the sound will go in through the spiral, and all the hairs will be doing this if in a healthy cochlea. And if you haven't got a healthy cochlea and the hairs are very small, they're not moving very much, or may not even be there at all. Usually they are there somewhere. So sometimes there's a tiny bit of response to sound, tiny bit. And then we're still not really hearing things, because there is sound, but we don't really hear and understand with our ear, because we hear with our brain. So next, oh, there's a dragon. Next, the sound goes to the brain, and the brain goes, oh, it's a dragon, if it's a dragon. Anyway, so we're interpreting those sounds. And remember I said about the little bear needing, he's got his hearing aids now, but that he could be 2 or 3 years old, that bear. He's now got to learn what all those sounds mean and start to identify them and discriminate between them. So there are different sorts of hearing loss. A little bit of water. Has anybody had a child themselves who has suffered from glue ear? About 1 in 5 children will have glue ear at some point, or a problem in their middle ear. Remember the bit that's through the oval window? That can get filled with fluid, which means all of that, sorry, the bit before the oval window, this bit, the middle ear, not the inner ear, the middle ear can get fit between the eardrum and the oval window, can get filled with fluid. If you've got a cold, sometimes you get your station tube blocks, and then that bit of your ear gets a bit nasty, and it needs to have air in it to be healthy. And if you get a cold, throat swells up and your tube is affected, your station tube is affected, and that can cause problems in the middle ear with fluid. And if that persists, it can turn to glue ear, and some children can have that persistently, which can cause problems. And then that's called a conductive hearing loss. So that's the picture on the left. You see the fluid there. The other type, in the other type of conductive loss is when the bones get eroded. Those 3 little bones can get eroded. And then, so they're both conductive losses, those ones at the top. And then the bottom 2 pictures are nerve damage to the cochlea, when those hair cells can get eroded. I don't really understand those pictures, but there you go. I just found them. So But it's really, I like to think of the hairs being healthy like that, and then if they're eroded or damaged, they're less able to move. Susie sides. Enough of that. So but hearing is very important, and amazingly, at around 16 weeks of pregnancy, the structures of the ear are already developed well enough to start detecting some sounds. So that's amazing, isn't it? At 16 weeks, you know, when you think you've had a baby, you think, oh, it's listening to music. Well, it is responding to sound and responding to the sounds in the womb. So and then, of course, if the ear is picking up those sounds and the brain is working out what those sounds are, you've already got those neural pathways forming before the baby is born. I think that's amazing. This is for a normal hearing child. By 24 weeks in pregnancy, babies can turn to sound. It's amazing. And when you think about that, it makes you realize that a baby who's born deaf has already, their deafness has already had an impact on them before we've even got the hearing aids on them, which is why it's really important to get the hearing aids on early, and why if they've got hearing aids, they need to wear them so that we can be stimulating that brain and they're listening. Would you like to hear the difference between a mild and moderate and severe and a profound hearing loss? Hopefully this will work. So you could tell that someone was talking. It got quieter. It kind of didn't get quieter, but it did get quieter. But the clarity went completely. And the thing that you tend to lose are the high frequency sounds, which are all the consonant sounds. So the start to all go as the hearing loss gets worse. And you know there's speech, but you can no longer get any clarity and you can't tell what the person is saying. So yes, with a mild loss, you can hear in quiet situations, but may miss a few word endings, and you might struggle over distance. Remember Freddie in the, not Freddie, Jade in the circle, missing Freddie. Moderate loss, you may miss new vocabulary or words out of context. So if it's a familiar word and you know it, that's fine. But new words, oh, you know, they've said a strange country or something, and it's very hard for you to hear or understand it. The child with a moderate loss might struggle in a group situation, and they might need repetition. Most children with a moderate loss will start to be needing hearing aids. Some children with mild loss have a hearing aid. A severe loss, those children might need visual patterns, may be highly reliant on hearing devices. So when I say visual patterns, it may not be sign, it just may be lip patterns, lots of visual aids, may be sign. They're highly reliant on their hearing aids. If they lose a hearing aid, that would be awful. And listening fatigue comes into play. So really exhausting, focusing all that time on listening, very, very tiring. Profound loss may access spoken language very well with cochlear implants. Now that is because cochlear implanted children still wear a device which they take off. And when they take it off, they have no hearing at all. They need to be wearing their implants. People think, oh, they're implanted, so they're fine. But no, they're not. So I always tell the story of how my little boy went to a school trip and we made sure he had batteries working. And we asked him to take his spare batteries with him. I said, you're going to Hampton Court next week. Don't forget to take your spare batteries. He forgot them. And on the bus, the batteries went flat and he's completely deaf and didn't hear a sausage all day. And he communicates verbally. So Hampton Court was a bit of a whatever for poor lad. I don't know. Big castle, lots of stones, not sure. So yeah, a lot of work went into that afterwards. So there's a picture of a hearing aid. I was going to bring a hearing aid up, but try and show you. But it's very important, if just thinking about this today, if a child does have hearing aids and comes out to you, that they either always have their batteries with them, or that you have some spare batteries out in wherever it is that you're working. So, because it's not okay if a battery goes flat to go, oh, it's okay, you can get it when you go home. It's not okay. They need to get new batteries straight away. And sometimes people say, oh, the hearing aid whistles, and that's because the bits, the soft white bit, the blue bit does all the work. The soft white bit goes into the child's ear. And sometimes you get a whistle when that's not pushed in completely. So we go to the children, push your ear molds in. Just give them a push and make sure there's a seal. Some children, does anyone have children who wear radio aids? A radio aid is a device that is very helpful for children who wear hearing aids because it reduces the effects of distance and background noise. So it's as if it sends the message directly to the hearing aids. So this little boy's got his hearing aid and then a little receiver that goes underneath. Anybody want to share a story about radio aids?
Yeah, my friend had one for her son. He had poor hearing when he was born, and they didn't realise, because he could speak quite well, but he really suffered with concentration because of all the background noise and distance and everything. So they got a receiver, and I think they didn't have it for very long, but it was a phenomenal change for him, because he could see that she could see that he was listening to her completely, and she could be on the other side of the room. And it makes sense now, hearing about the fact that if he'd not heard words and things and sounds very clearly in the womb and as a baby, it obviously helped to really speed up the understanding of what each and every word or sound meant, because she didn't use it for very long, and she said it made a phenomenal difference really quickly because it was totally tuned into him.
That's
so
right.
Yeah, I thought it was amazing to have a receiver. I've never seen one before.
Well, without the radio aid, many of those children who are sort of in the middle band, the moderate and severe children, they're missing so many words, which means that they've really got to have a lot of context to be able to follow it. And with our very young children, they just don't have the background of language that we have to actually fit all those words together. Whereas the radio aid will bring all of that language to them much more clearly. The little words, the word endings, so all your plurals and your jumped, they suddenly become more clear. Remember that when we listened to the Flintstones clip, we lost all of the consonants, and trying to make sense and build your language and your vocabulary, when we know that primary age children are building their grammar themselves, and if you haven't heard it, clearly you can't build it. There's no way that you can build it.
And he was 3, so it was right in that age of frustration as well.
Oh yes,
which you feel very strongly when you're 3. And so stopped sort of tantrums and frustration and everything, because it was just a pure communication of his to be like, rah! If he didn't quite hear what was going on or could make sense of it. So
those big difference. Exactly, and the terrible twos for many deaf children go on for a little bit longer whilst they're trying to work out and understand. Remember we said that was the big barrier, the understanding. But of course, radio aids work through walls, so you do have to be careful. And remember to switch off and mute when you move away. Not have a secret conversation with another adult, because the deaf children will be going, I don't know that I want to listen about Mrs. Date last night. It's not what I need. Too much information. So yeah, there's a mute button that's very important. And this was a little girl that I taught a few years ago, and she made this slide. So she said, at school, I have to tell my new teachers how to use the radio aid. Although I can hear you without my radio aid, it makes your speech much clearer and nearer to me. This is her language. My radio aid helps when it is a bit noisy, and it puts the teacher's voice into my ears. I thought that was lovely. She can still hear the other children around her, but she just hears the teacher's voice much more clearly. So it's as if this is going directly to her, almost. And you see the distance between the microphone and the person's mouth is about a handspan. So it's as if the child is a handspan away from you, wherever you are, in the woods. If you're in the woods, they're with you, even if you're behind a tree and around a corner. So you can go, it's time to come back to the fire, and hopefully they might hear you, which would be great. So we've been talking a little bit about these barriers in the story and the children that we've met. And without interventions, equipment and support, babies will not access spoken language clearly enough to develop their own spoken language. They may not acquire language at the same rate as their peers. They may have lower levels of comprehension, understanding compared to their peers. And deaf children find it very difficult to pick up language incidentally. So they need a lot more direct, intentional language teaching. So hearing children, you know, we're talking about deaf children in the whole range of deaf children, mild to profound. They're unable to pick up those conversations that on the other side of the room, as we said. And there's a lot of learning that could be happening then, a lot of social skills as well. Lots of social skills. And so the children need more intentional and targeted language opportunities and exposure to rich language. And I keep wanting to say about children who use BSL as their first language. So babies who are born into deaf families and use British Sign Language as their first language may develop BSL actually at the same rate as their hearing peers. So if you tested their language, BSL language and spoken English language, in terms of maybe how many colours they know, how many animals they know, how many verbs they know them all in BSL because their language is developing at the same rate. It's just a different language if they're born to deaf signing parents. So that's interesting. So I've said a little bit about the impact. Says about hearing screening happening very early on, which means that we see our deaf children in our local schools, which means that we'll all meet them as well. And also we said a little bit about children appearing to understand, but maybe missing lots of detail. So deaf children can acquire spoken language given the right environment. Language acquisition is dependent on many things. The age of the child, how much support is given to the family, the foundations of a good relationship with those around them. Is there a good bond with the adults in the family and those people in settings as well? Which is the same for all children. This is the same. This is for how all children develop language, and it is the same for deaf children. So let's think about our forest school and why our forest school could be a great place, because we've been talking about providing language opportunities that need to be rich and varied. And in our forest school settings, we have so many wonderful opportunities for language and communication development. And I know all these wonderful early years practitioners do this, even, you know, just using the inside and the outside play areas. But for our deaf children, it's about making those opportunities intentional and perhaps doing a little bit more of them. So all of those experiences like building dens, talking about fires, making fires, they're amazing hands-on experiences full of language opportunities, aren't they? Stories and songs, playing in the mud kitchen. Because they're real experiences getting our hands muddy and doing and learning through play. So we're creating an environment that's rich in language, so it's perfect for children with hearing difficulties. And I often would take my children out of the classroom when I came in to go and do some walks, to go and find different things out in the school field. I wasn't doing forest school, but we'd go and look for real objects or something. We'd be making things rather than sitting there in the classroom, perhaps doing slightly less of that. But our children needed to still be making and doing. And then the language tree would start to grow. Oh, why didn't it grow? Anyway, never mind. Did it grow? Ah, there we are. It grew. Oh, it's gratifying, isn't it? Oh dear. So we can make sure our environment is rich and full of lovely opportunities, which was on the last slide, all of that play. Those are all the opportunities and experiences. Then there are certain things that we can do when we're interacting with the children that can really enrich the language. We can interpret children's non-verbal communication verbally or with signs. So if they're doing something and playing and just pointing, we can verbalize for them, because then they are beginning to hear the word and link it with the experience if they're non-verbal. If a child's got only one word, we can copy that word and then we can add a little bit more. So if the child says, oh, so when I was out this afternoon, we're playing with the telescope, pretend telescope, looking around the forest school, and a child said a tree, and the other child got the telescope and said, it's an enormous tree. So it's just about adding a little bit more to one word utterances to enrich the language. And if the child says something which is an incomplete sentence, we don't correct, we just recast it. So we just offer it back. So if the child says tree big, we say, oh yeah, it's a big tree. We don't say not tree big. We don't correct. We just, what we call, teachers of the deaf and speech therapists, recasting sentences, and probably many early years teachers as well. And we don't force the child to copy. We would just pause and leave the break. And it's important to use lots of different sorts of language as well, so action words and descriptive words. Oh, I'm going the wrong way. This way. So we're back in the woods. There's a squirrel. Very rich language learning environment. Lots of things to see. I think we've said that really. Looking at forest school and all of your principles that you follow, it's a fantastic opportunity. If you provide a wonderful language learning opportunity in your forest schools, just that ethos of giving space and time for learning means that children with maybe delayed language or hearing difficulties have more time to overlearn the language in the here and now as they're doing it, rather than sitting and looking at a PowerPoint. And learning is participant-led, which is great for language development, because the children are choosing what they're playing with and we follow their interest. So already motivated. And I probably sit a lot and play alongside perhaps a little bit more than other people would do with a hearing child. So they choose what they want to play with, and I follow them and sit alongside, and I do the same play. I don't take over the play, but I play alongside and I do the commentary and talk about what they're playing with. But it's important to get a balance. I do realise that. I do talk a lot. I do try and stop sometimes. And obviously, yes, adults' roles, a joint learner alongside the child. I think I've just said that. And you're more of an equal partner in forest schools, aren't you? So, should we play a game quickly? So we've got some animals. I think, did we have some of these? Did we have some of these? Got some things in the forest. We've got an old tree. An old tree. A grey squirrel. A grey squirrel. Oh, an angry deer. and a fox. Maybe a small fox. Maybe a small fox. So we could do, oh, there I stopped sharing. Oh. So when I went to the forest, I saw an angry deer. So would anyone like to have a go at saying what they saw in the forest? Seeing what I saw, and then one more thing. So when I went to the forest, I saw an angry deer. Anybody? You might need to unmute. I can't see somebody.
I'll do one.
Go on then.
When I went to the forest,
yeah,
I saw
an
uh,
angry deer
angry deer
and
and small fox.
very good. Mimi, do you want to have a go?
I'll have a go. Okay. When I went, oh, this way, to
The forest.
the forest, I saw
Ang-
an
Angry.
an
deer.
angry deer and
Oh yeah, and a small
small
fox and grey
what was
squirrel.
blackbird? I like the black one.
Oh, blackbird. Do it. Make one up.
I can't remember. What was it?
Blackbird. Blackbird. Anybody else want to try and do 4? Anyone feeling clever? Brave? Brave. No.
I can do one. I can
Okay.
have one. Okay. When I
Went
went to
to
the
the
forest, what's this mind? I saw angry deer, small fox, a blackbird, and
and
an old tree.
an old
Oh,
tree.
old tree.
Old
Yeah,
tree.
old tree.
Well done.
Very good.
Fantastic. For one more. No. Shall I try? I'll try and add one more. When I went to the forest, or maybe we'll do winter forest. I saw an angry deer, a small fox, a black bird. What was it?
Old tree.
Oh, an old tree and a naughty grey squirrel eating my nuts for the birds. Okie dokie. It's a little break. It's quite a nice game as well to play with the children. If they want to learn some signs. And it's a nice way of learning some signs ourselves as well. No, I've got the thing again where it doesn't want to go. This is when you try to breathe, not panic. Move. Oh, I can't quite see the title there, but it says talking about how we use those interactions when we're playing with younger children, and just talking about questions and using questions. Oh, so it's 9 o'clock. So questions can be really useful for learning. I know that, but when we're working with little ones, questions can, you need to just be a bit careful with asking lots of questions. So I always say when I'm working with my parents, rule of thumb, so 1 question, 4 comments if you're playing alongside a child. And keep questions open. You can check whether a child's understood by asking questions, but comments are often better. Commenting on the play. Oh, it's a big tower. Oh, you found some wet leaves. Not what did you find? Because they're just going to say leaves. And for very little children, if you could do lots of what's that, what's that, what's that. Or you might say, oh, those are really rough sticks. And they go, yes, they're rough sticks. And I found them under the tree. But we're not modeling language if we use too many questions. So we just have to be careful about using questions. I perhaps didn't explain that very well. And now we're just thinking about our forest school environment and the things that we can do the things in our forest school environment that we can do to enhance it, really, the physical environment for our deaf children. So we're really into top tips now. So the physical environment, consider your positions. So it might be that you would stand opposite the child, in some cases at right angles to the child, so that they're able to see what they are doing and see your face. Perhaps if you're working on something together, right angles is quite good. So think carefully about your position if you're working with a deaf child. And then if you've got older children or young people, ask the child, where would you like me to, where would you like me to be now? Because we're going to have a demonstration of, I don't know, some tools. Where do you want to be and where shall I be? And if they've got an interpreter, ask where everybody should be. So if you've got older children, involve them in that decision of where they want to be in the group. We talked about getting children's attention, and if you're working with tools in the forest, it's a good idea to put all the tools down before and gets attention first, before talking, and get them to attend and focus. Demonstrating and talking can be a bit difficult, so you might want to talk a bit, then demonstrate, then talk, because it's the attention for a deaf child. They're having to lip read, look down, lip read, look down. So I'm going to tell you about it. We're going to use the tool in this way, show them, and then put it down. So listening over distance is challenging. Get face to face and stay in one place. We talked about that a little bit. Walking and talking doesn't work for deaf children very well. So making sure that you stay in one place and do most of your talking in. And for little children as well, I think walking and talking doesn't always work well. So that was the physical environment. I don't know why it's so high up. Can you read the top of the slide? I can't read the top of the slide. I think it says something like, make sure that you've got visual signals. So this is making communication clear now. So if you're thinking about your safety and getting children to come back and ensuring that everyone understands what the boundaries are at the forest school, you might want to consider some visual signals for deaf children, maybe flags. You might want to use some sort of talking in the circle, some sort of talking spoon flower, so you can take it in turns to talk. So if somebody's talking, they're allowed to hold the spoon, the flower, whatever, while they're talking, just so that the deaf child knows whose turn it is. And it's good for younger children as well. Consider questions carefully. We've said a little bit about that. It's less helpful to say, can you hear me? I know that comes up in the book. because all a child will say is yes. And I've been in lessons where the teacher's done all of the explanation and then they've said to me, oh, I asked him if he could hear me and he said yes. And I said yes, but he might have missed a lot of information. So it's better to say, so what are we doing next? And what happens after this? Or what are we going to do? Why are we going to do that? To check understanding. So that's where questions are used. Or can you tell me about that then? And then for older young people, young adults, texting and writing down is quite useful as well. But also just being very mindful when if you have an interpreter or teaching assistant helping you, include them in the decisions about how you're communicating, making sure that there's enough time if you're giving an instruction for them to explain to the child. And I mean, I'm thinking of the whole range of deaf children, from signing children to all children. Then fine-tuning, we talked about repeating answers and contributions from the group, especially if you're wearing a radio aid and you've asked a question, somebody over there has answered. Balance is often affected, and this is something that I get asked a lot about. So if you're doing, I don't know, climbing or tools work, just be mindful of the fact that sometimes balance and sensory integration for some deaf children is an issue, and knowing where they are in space. Because it's the area of balance is very near to the area of hearing. So again, it's all about that relationship with the child, that you'll know your child, won't you? And we've said as well, have we said this? So rather than repeating, if you said, put the, I don't know, put your lunch bags over by the rock, rather than repeating, put your lunch bags, this did happen today. Put your trousers in the box, put your trousers in the box, and put the trousers in the box. Take your trousers off. Like, got your trousers, where's the box? It's over there, go and put them in it. So it was, rather than repeating the same thing, the children weren't doing, they were just like, la la la. Take your trousers, take them off. Where's the box? Let's find the box. And rephrasing it rather than repeating over and over again. I think we do it, but it's just even more the case for our deaf children. And then demonstrate and model as well is really helpful, because some deaf children, if you use a very long phrase, it's hard to work out what it is you're saying. So you might say to the children, don't cross the fire circle. But for some reason, cross and fire circle isn't connecting. So then you might, I know that we all do this when you're teaching fires, but you need to model it more times, and then maybe show them when you do it wrong and they're allowed to say something to you. I'm sure you do this with all of the children, but it's even more difficult for the deaf children. We probably will not do that. We already did that actually, because we added some words to our when I went to the forest, I saw, and you can add some adjectives. When I went to the winter forest, I saw a grey squirrel, a small fox, a naughty squirrel. So adding words to extend children's simple sentences is really important. And adding actions as well, not forgetting our actions like, oh, look, they're hiding. Do you want to hide? Because without action words, we can't build sentences. Climbing, balancing. Oh, good balancing. We were following today. I was doing lots of so-and-so's following, you're following. Oh, that's good following. Shall I follow you? Do you want to follow me? Because follow's a weird word, isn't it? We were just talking about walking along. But using good verbs and using a range of verbs is important. I mean, it's intentional vocabulary teaching without saying, I'm going to teach you follow. We're just modeling words all the time. So we've got, let's see, a dent unshare, but I've got some envelopes here with some other children, so it's a little bit more interesting. I'm going to introduce you to a deaf person that I know. I'm going to read this out to you. Here is my friend Vance. My name is Vance. I communicate by lip reading, British Sign Language, and some speech. I am 65 years old and I am deaf. I like to visit the community hub at my church, where we can pick up some fresh fruit and veg for free. Last Saturday, I met a friendly woman who wanted to chat and to practice her British Sign Language. She stood inside and the sun was so bright, and behind her I could not see her face, and it was in shadow, so lip reading was impossible. She kindly moved, well, when I asked her, so I could see her face. My tip is, what's his tip, my friend Vance? It's just to be aware, especially in this winter weather when you've got the sun behind you, or in a classroom, you stand with your back to the sun, your face will be completely in shadow. And all of those visual clues have gone. And yes, he's very patient with me because I'm often struggling with my signing with him or standing in the wrong place. But yes, it's a little tip from Vance. Should we do another one of those? This is another little girl that I was teaching for a long time. I've changed her name. Hi, my name is Sarah. At school the other day, we had a supply teacher. When she arrived, she asked, "Who is the deaf child in this class?" Everyone looked around and I felt very awkward. I thought, who is she talking about? I'm not a deaf child. All my friends know I have hearing problems, and I like to describe myself and my hearing difficulties as a person who is hard of hearing. For me, the word deaf is not how I see myself. My teacher has told me that some people like the word deaf, and that's fine. But for me, I prefer the term hard of hearing. So yeah, she was 11 when that happened. And it was a supply teacher. And it's just deaf identity for our children is an issue as they're growing up, and talking about how they like to describe themselves and see themselves as a deaf or hard of hearing or hearing impaired person. These days, the word deaf is seen as very positive, and hard of hearing, they and children with hearing loss, those are the terms that deaf community prefers themselves. So we're trying to go with that as our service that I've just left. We were trying to use those terms and introduce those, speaking positively about deafness and hearing loss. And we're moving away from the term hearing impaired. But for some children, it's up to them how they describe themselves, isn't it? So we need to give them the choice. And so the next slide really is all the different types of communication that children have that you may come across. So sign supported English is English word order, spoken English with signs at the same time. British Sign Language, the language of the deaf community. Different word order, sometimes with speech visual cues, facial expressions, but usually the words are in a different order to English. Auditory oral, which is spoken English with no sign, and then total communication. The total communication, it's not a language in itself, but it would use perhaps some elements of BSL for some of the time when it was appropriate to do a story perhaps in BSL, or when the deaf people were speaking together, they might use BSL. For teaching, they might use sign-supported English, and for some of the time they'd be perhaps communicating with speech. So that gives you an idea of all the different types of communication. And then a little bit of current deaf news. So which you probably all know about, on the 28th of April 2022, the BSL Act was given royal assent, which means that it was recognised as a language of England, Wales and Scotland. So hooray. It doesn't mean that magically everybody will be signing everything and government offices will magically just have a signer all the time, and deaf people still got a challenge to have signers and interpreters in when they go to the doctors in hospitals, but it's a good first step. And from lots more deaf awareness on the media, many more people interested in learning sign language. So these are just some of the figures. Quite late for statistics, Susie. But anyway, here are the statistics. I can't see them because all my faces are in the way of the numbers. Hang on, I'm moving them. There we go. Right. So at the time, I can't remember where the figures came from. I'm sorry, I should know. There were 150,000 deaf adults and children who use British Sign Language. 87,000 deaf people say British Sign Language is their preferred means of communication. And survey of deaf and hearing young people by the NDCS found more than 90% who wanted BSL to be taught in schools. So that's going to be the GCSE that's coming in. And it's such a beautiful language to learn, said somebody. I should have written down who it was. I didn't write it down. Oh, now I need to move the people again. So this is quite an interesting graph. My son made this for me. He's good at graphs. And it's interesting to see that these are methods of communication. 66% of children, I think this was the research done by CRIDE, which is one of the deaf education research people. 66% of deaf children use spoken language. 24% use sign and spoken language, and only 10% use only sign. But there's no, in this there wasn't any question or statistic for the children who don't sign, who would like to, and I bet a lot of them would like to. So, and now I found I can move the people. It's very handy. I can move you around, so I can see what I'm doing. So some very simple, looking at the time, nearly time to stop. Simple signs. Should we do these and then maybe finish? That'd be good because we're getting tired. I'm getting tired. Let's just have a little practice of doing some everyday sign sentences. I'm going to stop sharing. And then we might call it a day. So we'll just do a few little sign phrases that we can all sign together. So should we do good morning and good evening? So we've got good morning, good morning. If you're right-handed, it goes this way, good morning. Left-handed, it's good morning. It's not morning, Susie, it's evening. So we'll do good evening, good evening, good night, good night. And maybe we could say, oh, later, would you like to have tea or coffee? Which? Later, would you like tea? That's like your hands like that. Tea or coffee? Which? Oh, I would like hot chocolate. Oh, how are you? How are you? Tired? Tired? I'm happy? I hope. So, I think I'm going to leave it there because it is getting quite late. Perhaps, shall we just finish with the last verse of the Fire Circle poem, which I made up about the fire, because I think it's lovely to think back to that community and all using the same language. So This is the fire that we've built together in our little community today. So we're going to sign, come together, gather round, near the fire, on the ground, flames of red and flames of gold, gather round when you are called. Fire circle, circle time, fire flame, flame fire. Fire circle, gather round, near the fire, on the ground. Thank you. We finished. And you can go and have a tea or a coffee now.